I think we hear this story often, this story of Jesus calling the disciples. It's not only in this gospel, but in others. And so it comes up at least once a year, probably. And every time I hear it, I always wonder why, why do they say yes just so quickly? They just drop everything and they just go. And I think most of us would have a very hard time if someone said, "Hey, do you want to come follow me?" And we're like, "Sure, like I have a career and a family, but like forget those things. I'm just gonna go follow this man I've never met before." I've been thinking about this as we're singing our new liturgy this season of Huga, as it comes from my campus ministry. And it reminds me of how I first became involved in campus ministry. When I first walked into the Lutheran Center on the campus of the University of Nebraska Lincoln, I walked in and looked around and was like, oh, this is where the weird kids go. And having been kind of a weird kid my whole life, and now, and especially I grew up in a class of like 120. And so there was no, like, if you were weird in elementary school, you were still weird in middle school, and you were still weird in high school. And so here I was on this college campus of like 20,000 people, and nobody knew me. And I didn't have to be the weird one anymore. So I was like, I'm gonna go to the cool kids church, which happened to be an evangelical campus ministry. So I was going there for a while, and then my parents came for a parents' weekend. And I was like, well, this evangelical church doesn't really meet on Sundays. So I guess this Lutheran Center, it's like right across from my dorm. It's very convenient. So I'll just take them there. And I walked in with my parents, and all of a sudden someone said, "It's Bridget, right? Welcome back." And I was like, oh no. They remembered me. And I think it was about that moment where I was like, I am a weird kid. And I think this is my home. And I think I'm supposed to be here. And it was true. It took a little bit of time, but part of the draw was the liturgy that we're singing. But another part was that I was seen for who I was, and that I was loved. And I didn't have to pretend at the Lutheran Center. It was a community that I wanted to be a part of, and they wanted me to be a part of it as well. And so when they asked me to sing in the choir, I said yes. And when they asked me to help sing in the worship band, I said yes. And when they asked me to be a peer minister, to be part of the leadership team, I said yes. And when they asked me to preach, I said yes. And when they asked me to lead Bible studies, I said yes. And when they said, "Have you ever considered ministry?" I said no. But they kept asking, and eventually I said, okay, yes. Because I loved being part of something that was bigger than myself. I love being part of this community. And still now, every year, they ask me to help write a devotional for Lent. And even though I am not a super huge fan of writing devotionals, I say yes. And they ask me to support them financially, and I say yes, because my heart is still seeking to be part of that place, to be in relationship with this place where I was known and seen and loved. I was thinking about this community as I read a commentary about our passage from Isaiah. I think the way that Matthew brings this passage back and the way that we hear this passage from Isaiah in Advent, it can be easy to think that Isaiah is predicting the future and is talking about Jesus. But Isaiah is actually talking about something completely different. There's some drama happening here in the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Assyria to the north has been the biggest empire, and they have been weakened by civil war, by plagues. And so there's a group of tinier little kingdoms around them that have kind of started this club, this anti-Assyria club, to try to start harrying their borders and try to stop paying tribute to Assyria so they don't have to raise so many taxes. Israel and Judah, the two kingdoms to the south, have also been weakened by war, by famine, by plagues. But there's a rebel leader who wants Israel and Judah to join this anti-Assyria club. And partly there's a lot more drama that I'm going to get into, but it's very fascinating. But God has been saying this whole time, you don't need to be part of that group because I remember you. I always remember you. I have seen you and loved you, and I will not abandon you. And God doesn't. Here we hear the southern kingdom of Judah is freed because they do not join in this other club. They are freed from encroaching rulers and punishing tribute and endless war. And so they rejoice, not alone, but communally, like a farming village, as they take in the fruit of their labor, like an army that has been victorious. They rejoice as Isaiah reminds them, like that one time that God used Gideon to save you from the Midianites. Remember that I have always been remembering you, that you are continually part of my saving history. And so here comes Jesus now, starting his ministry right after John has been arrested. And I don't know if there's ever really a great time to start a rebellious movement, but maybe right after the last guy who started one was arrested and sent to jail is a particularly bad time. But that doesn't matter for Jesus. Here comes Jesus proclaiming good news anyway by announcing his new reign. And he starts in these lands where people might remember, where God's saving history has showed up before. He announces his new reign and he invites people to join in. And so why would they say yes? Maybe they hated fishing. I think we have to say it. Maybe they just were like, okay, yeah, I'm done. I've been looking for an out for the longest time. But maybe, like John Wesley, their hearts were strangely warmed within them as they saw this man. Or maybe these people far down on this totem pole of society who had been told their whole lives that they will never matter. Maybe they hear this reminder from Jesus of a God who has always remembered them, a God who has always been there for them, a God who has always seen them and loved them. And their hearts have always been yearning to be part of something like that. And whatever Jesus calls them to do, it is worth it because it will be through a community where they are known and loved. I'm part of a couple of clergy groups on Facebook, and in one of them, somebody introduced something entirely new that he's done with his annual report. And I already turned mine in, so I'm not doing this. It's too late. Maybe next year, though. But he included not only, here's all the things that we've accomplished and all the things that we've done, he included a section called failures, where he said, over this year, here are some things that I was hoping to do, and I didn't. Or here's something that I learned from, because I wanted to do this thing, but it just didn't happen. I thought that would be super powerful. And so here, as we talk about just follow God's call, I think it's also important to name that it's hard. And there are times when I haven't done that. I think about in Superior, Wisconsin, in my last call. It's a town of about 30,000 at the very north end of the state, right next to Duluth, which is a much bigger city. But when we're talking about state organizations and state departments, they can't really cross state lines. So I found out in Superior, we're having a real problem recruiting foster parents because there weren't enough foster families in Superior. And there were some over in Duluth, but we couldn't send kids over to Minnesota. And so sometimes these kids would have to go 2.5 hours south to Eau Claire, which is our next biggest city, or sometimes the older ones would end up in group homes in Milwaukee or Madison, which is all the way at the other end of the state. So not only separated from their family, but also ripped out of their communities. And that broke my heart. And so here I was with a broken heart, with a parsonage that had 5 bedrooms, with some extra income, with time on my hands. And I think I was called to be part of the foster system in Superior, and I didn't do it. I had a chance to create that kind of relationship, that kind of community, one where kids who are really struggling would have a chance to be known and seen and loved. And I didn't take it. I was scared, maybe a little lazy. I lost track of time. There's always time later for it. And then I moved away. And so even when a call to follow, to join in, to be part of God's kingdom is clear and urgent, we don't always say yes. And so God calls again and again and again and again and again, reminding us over and over of the ways that God has remembered us, reminding us of the ways that we are known and seen and loved, and the ways that we can take that with us out into a world that is yearning for exactly the same thing. Last night, my brother-in-law mentioned that he signed up to donate bone marrow because that's how a childhood friend of his survived leukemia. And he just was like, "Yeah, I haven't been a match yet, but and I think it'll really hurt, but you could save somebody's life." And now his mom, my sister, and I are like, maybe we should do that. I I hate doing this, but later I'm gonna make an announcement about faith formation. So listen for that. And maybe that is where God is calling you. There are so many opportunities in this community, in this place, to join in the work that God is doing. Throughout this year, we will continue to hear from the book of Matthew, and Jesus will show up healing and teaching and preaching to remind people of this amazing God. And in between, showing people, here's how I'm showing up in this world. Here's how I am working in this world. Here is how I remember you. Then Jesus will say, follow me. Throughout this year, we'll hear about this amazing God who throughout history has remembered us and invites us to be part of something, who calls to our hearts that are seeking, who knows us and loves us, and then calls us to be part of this new reign of healing and restoration and reminding until all of creation truly knows that we are known and seen and loved. Thanks be to God.